So a month ago, I went to the museum with my dad. Now, if there's one thing about this man that you should know, is he's one of the most impatient people. So I was like, oh boy, let's see where this goes. A museum, of all things. I was like, maybe if we walk really, really fast, like 90 minutes, in and out, bearable maybe. I had no idea what to expect on this little day trip with my dad at the Bangladesh National Museum, located in Dhaka, Bangladesh, a city that is very populated, if you ever go. So what I found really amazing is how talkative my dad ended up becoming as we walked the many floors around Bangladeshi art, around Bangladeshi agriculture. He had so many things to say. And it's when I realized that museums are holding those stories that you don't often, in my case, hear from your parents. Parents who have left the motherland in search of opportunity, and in the process, they've become tongue-tied and have left their stories there. So you almost have to take them back for those conversations to happen. There were 2 floors dedicated to the liberation of Bangladesh. This happened around 1971. Bangladesh at one point was known as East Pakistan, and there was many years of trying to, not just trying, but actively committing genocide, erasing the language that is Bangla, and it's why nowadays there's this thing called International Mother Language Day that the UN celebrates, because Bengalis, Bangladeshis, are like, we love our language. Thank you. Oh my God, do we have another? Yes. So those 2 floors were probably one of the most powerful floors, because it walked me and my dad through a time that he also lived in. He was probably an early teenager in 1971, watching a country that didn't exist come to life. A country where people fought, like, all their blood shed and tears, martyrdoms. There was almost, I would say, 3 million people that were killed in the process of fighting for this country that now exists today, which has a lot of people, but has a lot of heart, so if you ever visit. But what I found astonishing is that there were synonyms to what we are now experiencing in 2024. With the genocide of Bangla, the language, with the genocide of intellectuals, the poets, the artists, the people who would philosophize about a vision, I was seeing really similarly bloodshed, martyrdom, endless corpses and images of children, women, and men, a striking resemblance to the Gaza Strip today. There were images of newspaper headlines of 1971, March 27th. The New York Times reads, "Leader of rebels in East Pakistan seized. Troops are fighting in cities, heavy losses seen." Words that stuck out to me were rebel, heavy losses, and it moved into protests, images of demonstrators facing the White House, set up a mock refugee camp to impress President Nixon with the suffering of Bangladeshi refugees. In a way, many of the things around how do we encourage and get solidarity from these high schoolers who are ruling our world right now. The Smithsonian writes, "The genocide the US can't remember, but Bangladesh cannot forget." I was heartbroken walking these floors with my dad, and also manically chuckling inside that the media really doesn't change. Governments act the same, old men acting like a bunch of high schoolers. 1971 or 2024, the schoolyard remains the same way of the popular kids belittling what desperately needs to be a revolution. Protest demands falling on deaf ears until there's no air left in us to keep going. Oh boy, it's a repeat. Cycles. I kept seeing history as a cycle you can't live outside of. And as of 2024, we're part of the cycle. They say the last 4 stages of genocide out of the 10 are preparation, persecution, extermination, and denial. Boy, are we in denial. I feel like we're in a cycle watching these headlines: rinse, cycle, tumble, hang to dry, lives hung to dry into corpses, repeat. Does genocide have an end cycle button, an emergency, where we turn this machine load off and hold on to these lives? Or is it only to be televised and to be neatly packed into a 10 carousel image on our Instagram? When we're watching from our phones the cries of lives hung to dry. We're hoping for the revolution to be televised, for self-determination to take up the space, all of the media sound bites, to take up all the space for hours and hours in a news cycle, not just minutes. Let the revolution take up all the space. Make those popular kids feel the discomfort. My dad and I wandered and observed and took it in, the cycles of this machine that we're in. The connecting thread of genocide across generations, across oceans and lands. Wondering, is a museum the last stop? The last stop to preserving our complicity? That's it.